A lot of people think that if you want to make someone obsessed with you, you have to constantly feed them attention, shower them with praise, and never let a day go by without telling them how much you care. But the truth is, that's not what creates obsession. In fact, sometimes doing that too much makes your words blend into the background. They lose their magic. What really makes someone stop in their tracks and think about you over and over again is the right compliment delivered at the right moment in a way they absolutely did not expect. Think about it. How many compliments do people get that are just recycled phrases? You're handsome. You're smart. You're funny. Those are nice, but they're like background music in a coffee shop. Pleasant, but not memorable. The kind of compliment I'm talking about is one that pierces through the noise, lands in a person's heart, and stays there because it felt like it came from nowhere and everywhere at once. It's not something you sprinkle into every conversation. It's something you wait for, like a sniper with a single bullet, lining up the perfect shot. The timing is everything. If you tell someone they're amazing when they're expecting to hear it, it's nice, but it's not going to haunt them in the best way possible. But if you say it after they've just done something small, something they probably didn't even realize you noticed, that's when it sticks. Let's say he's telling you about how he helped a friend move last weekend. He's not bragging. He's just mentioning it in passing. And you stop for a second and look him in the eye. And you say, "Do you know what I love about you?" You just quietly do the right thing without needing anyone to notice. That moment, that exact unforced, unexpected moment will replay in his mind on the train ride home, in the shower, before he falls asleep. Because it wasn't about the big show version of himself. It was about the part of him he thought no one was paying attention to. You saw it, you named it, and now he'll always associate you with that feeling of being deeply seen. You don't need to pile on 3 more compliments after that. In fact, don't. Let it sit there. Let him have that one sentence, unspoiled by trying to make it bigger or fancier. The quietness of it makes it more powerful. We live in a world where so many interactions are loud and fast and performative, but the things we remember are often the moments that feel private, almost stolen from time. Another reason timing is so important is because of something I call emotional contrast. If you're constantly praising someone, the effect levels out. It's like eating dessert for every meal. Eventually, it stops tasting sweet. But if you're measured and intentional, your words carry more weight. It's the difference between having a constant drizzle of rain and a sudden, warm summer shower. The second one makes you stop, close your eyes and feel it. Now, I know what you might be thinking. But won't he think I'm holding back if I'm not constantly telling him these things? Not if you're being present, engaged, and genuinely interested in his life. The everyday connection is still there. This isn't about withholding love or validation. It's about choosing the edge of his moment so that when you do say something, it becomes one of those sentences that brands itself into his memory. And here's the funny part. When you do it right, you can literally see it happen. You'll watch his expression change. His eyes will flicker like you just revealed a part of himself he didn't even know you could see. There might be a pause, almost like he's saving the sentence somewhere in his brain for later. And trust me, he will go back to it. He'll replay it when he needs a boost, when he's missing you, or when he's wondering why you have such an effect on him. If you want to make this work in your own life, the secret is to start paying closer attention, not to the moments when he's obviously trying to impress you, but to the moments when he's just being himself, when he's not thinking about how he looks, when he's talking about something that matters to him, when he's helping someone without expecting anything in return. Those are the moments that reveal someone's true nature, and those are the moments when your words will mean the most. And here's what's beautiful. You only have to do this once. That's the thing about an authentic, timed compliment. It doesn't evaporate. It gets stored. And because it was rare, it becomes more valuable. He'll remember where he was standing when you said it, the way you looked at him, even the tone of your voice. And every time he recalls it, he'll feel a little bit of that same warmth all over again. That's not just a compliment, that's a trigger for connection. The right words at the right time can live in someone's head rent-free for the rest of their life. Most people, when they try to make someone feel good, go straight for the obvious. You look amazing tonight. That shirt really suits you. You've got such a great smile. And look, there's nothing wrong with saying those things. They're lovely. They make people feel nice in the moment. But they don't tend to linger. They don't create that deep, lasting imprint that makes someone think of you at the most random times. Why? Because those kinds of compliments only touch the surface. They speak to what anyone can see. But if you want to really get into someone's head and heart, you have to speak to who they are, not just what they look like. When you tell a man something about his character, his values, his passions, something that's not immediately obvious, you're showing him that you've paid attention on a deeper level. And that's rare, because the truth is, most people don't slow down enough to actually see beyond the surface. They notice the obvious, they point it out, and they move on. But when you acknowledge something that feels tied to his identity, the way he treats people, the dedication he shows in his work, the way he never gives up on a project once he's started, you're touching on the things that make him feel like him. Here's the thing, men, just like women, walk through life carrying quiet insecurities. Maybe he wonders if he's really living up to his own standards. Maybe he's not sure anyone notices how hard he tries in certain areas. So when you say something that affirms the man he wants to be, it's like holding up a mirror that reflects the best version of himself. And because you're the one holding that mirror, he'll connect that feeling back to you every single time it comes to mind. Let's imagine this in a real scenario. You're out with him and a few friends, and he does something small but telling. Maybe he steps in to smooth over a disagreement in the group, or he goes out of his way to make sure someone's comfortable. Later, when you're alone, you look at him and say, "You have this way of making everyone feel safe when you're around. It's like you can't help but take care of the people in your space." You're not commenting on his appearance. You're not even talking about something he chose to show you. You're reflecting back a truth about who he is. That's powerful because appearance-based compliments can be fleeting. Looks change. Outfits change. But the compliment you give about someone's essence sticks because it's not dependent on any one day or moment. It's woven into who they are. And when you speak to a man's identity, you're making him feel seen in a way that's not transactional. You're not saying it because he dressed up for you or did something obvious to earn it. You're saying it because you noticed it when he wasn't even trying. Another reason this works so well is because people can argue with appearance-based compliments in their own minds. You tell a guy he looks great and he might think, "Yeah, but I've gained weight," or, "Yeah, but this shirt hides the parts I don't like." But when you compliment his character, "I love how committed you are to finishing what you start. Or, you have this way of putting people at ease. There's far less room for self-rejection. It's not about a single snapshot in time, it's about the story of who he is. And that story is much harder to dismiss. Now, this doesn't mean you can never tell a man he looks good. Of course you can, and you should if you genuinely feel it. But if you want to leave that lingering effect, you need to make sure you're mixing in those deeper observations. Think of it like this: looks-based compliments are like candy. Sweet and enjoyable, but gone quickly. Character-based compliments are like a favorite meal. Nourishing, satisfying, and something you want to come back to again and again. The best part is, this doesn't require you to invent anything or be overly poetic. It's about observing and verbalizing the things most people overlook. It's about saying, I see the way you treat the waiter with respect every single time we go out. Or, I notice how you always follow through on what you promise. I admire that. These aren't grand declarations, but they land deeply because they affirm something fundamental about the person hearing them. And here's a little secret. When you do this, it also changes how he sees you. Because in his mind, you're no longer just someone who enjoys his company. You're the person who understands him in a way other people don't. That's addictive. It's human nature to want to be around the people who make us feel most ourselves, who remind us of our best qualities, and who make us feel like those qualities are valued. The moment you stop focusing only on what's visible and start speaking to what's invisible, you're not just giving him a compliment. You're giving him a connection. And that's the kind of thing he won't stop thinking about. One of the most underestimated ways to make someone feel completely drawn to you is to connect them directly to the way you feel. Not just to tell them they're great, not just to point out something they've done, but to let them know the effect they have on you. Because here's the truth: people remember feelings far longer than they remember facts. You could tell someone they're talented, ambitious, or intelligent, and that's nice. But if you tell them, when I'm around you, I feel inspired to be better, that's a completely different experience. When you tie your compliment to an emotion, you're not just saying something about them, you're revealing something about you. You're letting them see that they've impacted your world, shifted your mood, or changed the way you look at things. That's intimate. That's personal. And intimacy is what makes words stick. Think about it from the other side for a second. Imagine someone says to you, "You're really funny." It's flattering, sure. But now imagine they say, "Whenever I'm with you, I feel lighter, like I can let go of everything else for a while." You're not just hearing about a skill or trait you have. You're hearing about the experience you create for them. That's the kind of statement that lodges itself in your mind and replays because it's a reflection of the impact you have, not just the qualities you possess. This works because people are deeply motivated by the way they make others feel. Whether they admit it or not, most people want to feel like their presence matters, like their existence changes something for the better. When you tell a man, "When you're around, I feel safe," or "You make me feel excited about life," you're telling him he's not just occupying space in your day. He's actively shaping it. And that makes him want to be around you more, because being with you now feels tied to a sense of purpose and value. Now, the key here is authenticity. If you start saying things just to manipulate or to get a reaction, it'll fall flat. He'll feel it. But when it comes from a genuine place, when you're actually tuned into how you feel in his presence, your words will carry weight. The delivery matters too. You don't need to make it a grand speech or dress it up with flowery language. In fact, sometimes the most powerful thing is to say it simply, almost in passing, but with enough sincerity that he knows you mean it. Picture this: you're walking together after dinner. Maybe you're laughing about something silly. And in a quiet moment you say, "You always make me feel like I can be completely myself." You're not forcing the moment. You're not waiting for a perfect spotlight. You're just letting it slip out naturally. And because it feels spontaneous, it feels real. That realness is what makes him take it to heart. This kind of compliment also works on a deeper psychological level. When you share the way you feel, you're giving him a little peek behind the curtain. Most of the time, we operate in relationships guessing how we're affecting the other person. We notice the smile, the laughter, the body language, but we don't always get it spelled out for us. When you do spell it out, you remove that guesswork and replace it with certainty. Certainty that his presence is having a positive, emotional effect on you. And that certainty can be addictive. What's interesting is that you don't have to overdo this for it to have a lasting effect. In fact, you shouldn't. If you attach every single conversation to, "You make me feel," it starts to sound like a tactic instead of a truth. The reason it works is because it's rare. It stands out. Just like a beautiful song you only hear once in a while, it makes you stop and pay attention. When you choose to say it, make it specific. "You make me feel good" is fine, but "you make me feel like everything is going to be okay, even when life's a mess," is richer, more textured. It paints a picture. And when you paint that picture, his mind will start replaying it in different moments. Maybe when he's driving home, maybe when he's lying in bed, maybe in the middle of his workday. That replaying is where the obsession starts to build, because every time he recalls your words, he also recalls the emotional state you link to him. And here's the part most people miss: when you connect someone to a feeling they want to be responsible for, you're actually influencing how they show up in the future. If you tell a man, "You make me feel safe," he's going to be more conscious of protecting that feeling. If you tell him, "You make me feel alive," he'll want to keep bringing you moments that spark that energy. Your words become a standard he wants to live up to. Not because you demanded it, but because you gave him a role in your life that feels good to play. So when you're with someone and you feel that shift, that little lift in your chest, that sense of comfort, that spark of excitement, don't keep it to yourself. Let him know. Let him see the effect he's having. Because the truth is, long after he forgets what you were wearing or where you were that day, he'll remember exactly how you said it and exactly how it felt to hear it. If you really want to say something that will stay in a man's mind for years, it can't just be something anyone could say to him. It has to be something that only you could say, because it's rooted in the story you share together. Generic lines don't stick. They might make someone smile in the moment, but they fade because they could have come from anyone, anywhere. What makes words unforgettable is when they're tied to a specific experience, a shared moment, or an inside reference that belongs to the two of you. This is why you can't just copy a compliment you heard somewhere else and expect it to have the same effect. If you tell a guy, "You're the most incredible person I've ever met," that's nice. But he has no real anchor for that statement. It's floating. But if you say, "When you did that thing last week, when you stayed up helping me finish that project even though you were exhausted, that's when I realized you're the most incredible person I've ever met." Now it lands. Now it has context. and because it's connected to something he can remember and replay. It becomes part of your shared history. We're all wired to remember emotionally charged moments more vividly than neutral ones. When your words are woven into a memory, the two of you created together, it's like you're embedding them into a scene that already means something to him. So every time he recalls that night, that day, that conversation, he also recalls exactly what you said and how it made him feel. That's how a single sentence can replay in his mind years later. The beauty of making it personal is that it also shows him you're paying attention. You're not just noticing the things anyone could see from the outside. You're noticing the little details that most people would miss. Maybe it's the way he subtly diffuses tension when people are arguing. Maybe it's how he orders extra food, just in case someone's still hungry. Maybe it's that he never lets you carry the heavy bag, even if it's inconvenient for him. These things might be small, but when you point them out in your own words, they stop being small. They become proof that you see the version of him most people overlook. And here's something important. It doesn't have to be a perfect or cinematic moment for your words to matter. In fact, sometimes the most powerful compliments are the ones that come in quiet, almost ordinary moments. Imagine you're in the car together after running errands. There's no big romantic setting, and you just say, no one has ever made me feel as understood as you do. That line doesn't need candles or music to work. It works because it's personal and true, because it's anchored in the relationship you actually have. Not some scripted movie version of it. When you make a compliment unique to your story, it also becomes impossible for him to hear it from anyone else. That's a big part of what makes it powerful. If you say, "I love how you handled that conversation with your sister. You were firm but so kind," that is your observation. No one else can replicate it because no one else was there in that exact moment, seeing it through your eyes. And because it's so specific, it feels more valuable. It's not something he could just swap out with another person. It's tied to, "Hey you." This is where so many people miss an opportunity. They think attraction and connection are built only in the big moments, the grand gestures, the dramatic declarations. But often, it's in these small, specific acknowledgements that the real attachment forms. When someone knows you've stored away little snapshots of them, it tells them they matter to you in a way that goes beyond the surface. And that realization is magnetic. Of course, for this to work, you have to actually be present enough to notice those things in the first place. You can't create something personal and unique if you're not paying attention. That means listening carefully when he talks about his day, watching how he interacts with people, noticing his habits and quirks. The more you observe, the more raw material you have to work with when it comes to saying something that will truly stick. And you don't need to overthink the delivery. You don't have to wait for the perfect setup. Often, the most memorable moments happen when you just drop the line naturally, without trying to make it into a big performance. You might be sitting on the couch or waiting in line somewhere, and it just slips out. That's part of what makes it so believable. It doesn't feel staged. When your words are personal to your story, they stop being just words. They become markers in the relationship, little mental bookmarks he'll flip back to again and again. They're not something he can hear from anyone else, and that exclusivity is part of what makes them addictive. In a world full of generic praise, the thing that's rare will always stand out. Because when you say something only you could say, in a way only you could say it, you don't just give him a compliment. You give him a memory. If you want something you say to live in someone's mind for years, you can't rely on logic to get it there. Facts and reasoning are useful in debates, in problem solving, in making decisions. But they're not what make a person lie in bed at night, replaying a single sentence you said. What does that is emotion. It's the emotional charge behind your words that makes them stick like a photograph burned into the mind. If you want him to be obsessed with what you said, you have to anchor it in feeling, not just in meaning. Think about the last time you remembered something vividly from years ago. It wasn't because the information was groundbreaking. It was because of how you felt in that moment. You might remember a throwaway comment a teacher made in school, not because it was the most profound piece of wisdom, but because of the way it made you feel seen, proud, or challenged. Or maybe you remember something someone said during a breakup, not because the sentence was perfectly crafted, but because your emotions were running so high that every word carved itself into your memory. That's how the brain works. It holds onto the things charged with feeling. This is why you can't just give him a statement that's purely descriptive, even if it's technically positive. If you say, "You're a good person," that's nice, but it's not necessarily going to echo in his head. But if you say, "When you walk into a room, people just relax," they trust you without even knowing why. Now you've wrapped the compliment in a layer of emotional imagery. You've made him feel what you mean, not just understand it. It's the difference between telling someone they're strong and telling them, "When you handled that situation the other night, I realized there's nothing life could throw at you that you couldn't get through." One is a label, the other is an experience. And experiences are far more memorable because they pull someone into a moment, not just a concept. When you tap into emotion, you're also tapping into the part of the brain that isn't rational. That's important because obsession doesn't live in the rational part of the brain. You don't get hooked on something because you've analyzed it and concluded it's worth holding on to. You get hooked because it bypasses logic and hits you where you feel it. That's why a song can make you cry without warning, or a smell can suddenly take you back 10 years. Those things don't ask for permission from your logical brain. They go straight to the emotional center. Your words can do the same thing. The way you deliver them matters. Tone, timing, even your body language. All of it contributes to the emotional weight of what you're saying. You could take the exact same sentence and deliver it flatly, and it would vanish from memory. Or you could say it softly, looking him in the eye with that slight pause that tells him you mean it, and suddenly it becomes something he replays over and over. People remember the eyes way you made them feel in that moment as much as the actual words. Or one of the most effective ways to make your words emotional is to connect them to a vivid moment. Don't just tell him what you think. Tell him when you realized it, or what triggered it, instead of, "You're really thoughtful." You might say, "The other night, when you went back inside just to grab my scarf so I wouldn't be cold, I thought, God, you're one of the most thoughtful people I've ever met." Now it's not just an abstract statement. It's tied to an image, a feeling, a specific slice of time. That's what makes it stick. You can also make your words more emotionally powerful by letting yourself be vulnerable in how you express them. There's a big difference between casually tossing out a compliment and letting him see that it actually moves you to say it. If you pause, if your voice softens, if you look away for a second because you're almost shy to admit it, those things add emotional charge. They signal that this isn't something you tell everyone, that it matters enough to make you feel a little exposed. And when someone feels that your words are coming from a place of real vulnerability, they take them more seriously. The other thing to remember is that emotions are contagious. If you're feeling genuinely lit up, touched, or moved when you say something, he's going to feel some of that energy too. That's why you can't fake this. If you don't feel it, it won't translate. But when you do, the effect is magnetic. Your emotion becomes his emotion, and that's where the connection deepens. Logic can tell someone why you like them. Emotion makes them feel like they can't stop thinking about you. And the beautiful part is, it doesn't take a long speech to do this. Sometimes it's just one sentence, delivered in the right moment, with the right energy. That leaves its mark for years. Because the truth is, when you speak to the heart instead of the head, you're not just giving someone a compliment. You're giving them a feeling they'll never forget. One of the mistakes people make when they finally find the perfect thing to say is they say it too much. They repeat it, thinking it'll make the impact stronger, but what actually happens is the opposite. It starts to lose its magic. Part of what makes certain words unforgettable is that they're rare. They happen once, maybe twice, and then they live in the other person's mind as something special, something they can revisit in their own time. If you keep repeating it, you're not letting it breathe. You're taking away the space that allows it to echo. You have to think of these moments like a beautiful scent. If you wear it every single day, it stops turning heads. People get used to it. But if it's something you bring out on special occasions, it becomes a signature, something they look forward to, something they notice immediately when it's there. The same is true for words that carry deep meaning. They need room to be missed so they can be remembered. When you say something that really lands, there's this natural temptation to follow it up, to keep talking, to make sure they know you meant it. But the real power comes from saying it once, letting the silence hold it for a moment, and then moving on. That pause after you say something meaningful is like hitting save in his brain. If you fill it with more words, you risk diluting the effect. It's also worth remembering that when you give someone space after a powerful statement, you give them the chance to own it. He gets to replay it in his head without you pushing it. He gets to decide how it made him feel, and that sense of ownership makes the memory stronger. You've planted the seed. Now let it grow on its own. If you keep watering it every 5 seconds, you drown it. Think about the most impactful things people have said to you in your life. Were they repeated every week? Probably not. They were likely said once, maybe in an unexpected moment, and they stayed with you because you had time to carry them around in your mind. The same applies here. If you say it once and then leave it alone, he'll come back to it on his own. And the more he replays it privately, the deeper it sinks in. This is also about trust. When you let your words stand on their own, you're showing that you trust their weight. You're not trying to force a reaction. You're not saying it over and over to get reassurance that he heard you or that it landed. You're confident enough to leave it there, knowing it will do its work without you micromanaging the process. That quiet confidence makes the statement even more powerful. There's a kind of seduction in restraint. Anyone can flood someone with attention and praise, but it takes a different level of awareness to give just enough and then stop. That's what creates a pull. The sense that he's still thinking about what you said, still wondering when you might say something like that again. It keeps him curious. And curiosity is one of the most potent fuels for attraction. It's the same principle that makes a song more addictive when you only hear it every so often. If it plays constantly, you start tuning it out. But if it's rare, you lean in every time it comes on. You anticipate it. You savor it. Your words should work the same way. Say them when they matter most. Then let the space between them work in your favor. Sometimes the most memorable things you'll ever say aren't followed by more words at all. They're followed by a smile, a change of subject, or even just carrying on with whatever you were doing. That's part of what makes them stick. You've given him something beautiful to hold on to, and you haven't rushed in to wrap it up or explain it. You've left him alone with it, and in that space, he'll turn it over in his mind, wondering if you even realize how much it affected him. This is why it's so important not to treat these moments like a script you can perform over and over. They have to stay rare, spontaneous, and organic. If he feels like you're recycling lines, they lose their meaning. But if he feels like he caught a glimpse of something you don't show often, a moment of genuine emotion, a rare insight into how you see him, it becomes a treasure. And treasures aren't given out every day. Because in the end, what you want is not for him to hear your words 100 times, but for him to feel them every time they replay in his mind. And for that to happen, you have to give them the space to echo